Hey guys, we are gonna do panna cotta. It's our last recipe for the week. It's pretty exciting. It's gonna be pretty similar to the cremo, but it's not gonna have really too much flavor. The only flavor is gonna come from the buttermilk. You can see in your book that there's like a cinnamon, there's a lemon panna cotta, and there's also a chai tea, which sounds really good. So chai tea might be a good one for the holidays. So really similar process. I have my mise en place here, milk, gelatin, sugar, salt, buttermilk. And for the water, I know it calls for a 1 ounce, but we're gonna bloom our gelatin just like we did for the cremo. So I'm gonna bloom it in cold water. I'm gonna do 2.5 gelatin sheets. Each gelatin sheet is about 2 grams. So we need 3 grams of gelatin for this recipe. We'll let that start to bloom. Meanwhile, I'm gonna do my heavy cream in here. Bring this up to a boil. And that's also gonna get all the sugar and the salt. Panna cotta is one of the most simple recipes that you can do. If you're in a quick pinch and you need to find something that's yummy and impressive to make for your friends and family, this is definitely one of them. It's a really nice cold dessert. Sometimes it's hard to find a cold dessert, but this is one of them. It's really great. All right. So we are gonna bring the sugar, salt, and the cream together, and we're going to stir it over medium heat to dissolve the sugar, and we're not gonna bring it up to a simmer, but we're gonna make sure that it doesn't scald, but that the sugar all melts. So you can kind of see the sugar melting already. It's that clearish color. All right. And you can add any flavors to this. You can add vanilla, you can add almond, blueberry, you can add like blueberry puree or any sort of fruit puree. You can do a honey, pistachio. There's really a lot of different things that you can do with panna cotta. All right, so it looks like our gelatin has bloomed. You can see that it's kind of a weird jellyfish sort of texture. We're gonna squeeze it out. Make sure that all the water, as much as possible comes out of it. I'm gonna set this aside. Looks like the sugar is done dissolving. We don't want to bring this up to a simmer because that's gonna alter the flavor of the cream. We're gonna remove it from the heat. We're gonna add the gelatin in. Now, very much like the cremo, we do not need to heat up the gelatin prior to adding this in here because just the heat of the mixture alone will be enough to melt this gelatin. And if we were adding the gelatin to something cold, like say whipped cream, to stabilize it, we would need to melt it and then incorporate it into the cold mixture. But for this, as you can see when I'm stirring it in, the gelatin just really melts away. Like I said with the cremo, a lot of times you'll see in a recipe to use an immersion blender or a stick blender to blend your liquid to really make sure that there aren't any gelatin pieces in there, because sometimes if the gelatin doesn't bloom all the way, especially the gelatin sheets, you can have solid pieces of the gelatin. Or even if it just doesn't mix all the way and your mixture is too cold and doesn't melt it, you can have little pieces of gelatin and they're like still that gummy texture, but it's just like a little chunk of it and it's not fully dissolved and incorporated into the recipe, and that's not great either. And when that happens, you can actually see the little gummy chunk that's like a little gummy bear. You can see that in the mixture when you're working with it. So then we're gonna add in our buttermilk. That's gonna help to cool this down. And I'm gonna put everything back into this volumetric measuring container. so that way I can portion it into my little containers. And just like with the cremo, you can put these in any little dishes that you like. Shot glasses work really, really well. Little yogurt cups, little bowls, but I'm gonna use these same little containers that I have. So this is the rosemary cremo that has been cooling already. And I'm just gonna put these in the same container. What I'm gonna do, so I can make sure that I don't mix them up, is I'm gonna label them. And to do that, I'm just gonna do a line on my parchment, and I'm gonna say rosemary cremo, with an arrow, and the panna cotta. And again, we're gonna wanna fill these on the container that they're gonna be stored on and chilled on, just because it's a lot easier to fill them on the container rather than to fill them on a different surface and then transport them. Because what can end up happening is this mixture is not all the way set yet, obviously, because it's still kind of warm. And if you slosh them around a little bit, oops, let's start from the left and work to the right. If you slosh them around a little bit, some of that mixture is gonna stick to the side of the container, and you'll end up with something just really not nice, not pretty for presentation. It's not gonna look good. So to help keep the container really nice and clean and presentable, filling your containers on the sheet that they're gonna be stored on really, really helps with that. Divide these evenly. And you know, you might get more, you might get less than me, depending on what sort of container you're using. These, I think, are about 2 ounces each. I don't really measure them. I'm going to show you what I mean by the liquid getting on the sides of the containers. Oops. All right, so if I were to try to transport this, I don't know if you can see this, and you know, it's sloshing around. Ooh, this is actually a pretty good container. You don't see anything. You can see a little bit of that, of liquid sticking to the sides of the containers, and it's just not a nice, super neat presentation. So these are gonna get covered partially, loosely covered. They're gonna go into the fridge, and then once they're cooled, about 2 hours, I'm gonna wrap them individually. So these are just gonna get partially covered for now. And we can store these either in the fridge or in the freezer. There we go. There's Cody and our cat Pecan.
Yeah, Pecan.
Ugh. Jeez. Oh my gosh. All right. So that's the last recipe for week 1 custards. It's been about 9 hours, and I'm gonna take out the cremo. And I'm also gonna just take out the panna cotta too. This is the panna cotta, so we're gonna try that. You can see it's set up pretty nicely. Oh my gosh. The buttermilk in there just gives it a really nice tang. It's almost as tangy as like a Greek yogurt. Yeah, it's delicious. All right, thanks for watching, guys.